The first thing you need to understand is that the distance between level 1 and level 8 is not a gradient. It is a cliff. Several cliffs, each one higher than the last, with longer drops and stranger landings. Most people never leave the foothills. A small number go all the way to the edge of the last one and come back changed in ways they cannot fully explain to anyone who hasn't been there. Some of them don't fully come back at all, which is a different kind of changed. This is every level, from the first joint at a house party to the substance that dissolves the boundary between you and everything else, and the dissolving takes 15 minutes and the reintegrating takes years. Let's go. Level 1, the first joint. You didn't seek it out, it was just there. Someone's kitchen at a party, or a friend's garden in summer, or the backseat of a car you were already in for a different reason. The handoff was casual. Here, try this. You did. The first time most people smoke weed, nothing happens. The body doesn't know what to do with the THC yet. Some tolerance building is required before the receptors respond properly. You feel slightly strange, maybe a mild loosening behind the eyes, and you go home and sleep fine and that's it. The second time something happens. And what happens is difficult to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it because the description sounds either trivial or ridiculous depending on how you frame it. Music sounds different. Not better exactly. More textured, more present. The conversation you're having has a quality of interest it didn't have before. Food tastes extraordinary. The edges of things are slightly softer. You are not impaired in the way that alcohol impairs. You are altered in a different direction. Everything is slightly more itself. You are a teenager or you are in your 20s, and this is, statistically, one of the most common experiences a person your age is having. 52% of Americans have tried cannabis. The number keeps rising as legalization spreads and the cultural stigma continues its long retreat. What you are doing is normal in the statistical sense, even if it doesn't feel normal in the experiential sense, because the first time you are genuinely high is the first time your ordinary consciousness has been shown a door it didn't know was there. You don't become a drug addict. You don't spiral. You have a nice evening and you go home and you think about it for a few days, and the following weekend you do it again. This is what level 1 looks like for the overwhelming majority of people who pass through it. An occasional pleasant alteration of an otherwise unaltered life. Level 2, the regular. The joint is no longer remarkable. It is a Thursday evening activity, a weekend ritual. The same category of ordinary as a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, distinguished from those only by its legal status in certain jurisdictions and by the particular quality of attention it produces. You have preferences now. Strains. The difference between the one that makes you energetic and creative and the one that makes you sink into the sofa and watch 3 hours of television without registering a single plot point. You know which dispensary has the best product or which person to call if you need something specific. You have opinions about edibles versus flower, about vaporizers versus rolling, about the specific ratio of THC to CBD that produces the experience you're after. The experience you're after has also changed. In the beginning, the high was the point. Now the high is the context. You use it to focus on music or creative work. You use it to ease the edge off social anxiety at parties. You use it to decompress at the end of days that require decompressing. It has become a tool rather than an event. This is, depending on your perspective, either the healthy integration of a useful substance into adult life or the beginning of a dependency that looks like functionality. Probably it is both simultaneously, and the ratio depends on the individual and the circumstances, and 100 other variables that nobody has yet modeled cleanly. You are not thinking about any of this. You are watching a film on a Tuesday night, and the film is excellent, and your tolerance is up, and you've eaten 2 squares of a chocolate you know the dosage of, and life is fine. Level 3, the edible incident. Every person who uses edibles has this story. You have it too, you ate. Too much. Not dramatically too much, just too much. The dosage of edibles is genuinely difficult to calibrate because the onset is delayed, 30 minutes to 2 hours depending on your metabolism and what you've eaten, and the inexperienced or even the experienced on a night where the judgment slipped take more because nothing seems to be happening and then everything happens at once. The ceiling comes down, not literally. But the room gets smaller in a way that has nothing to do with its dimensions. Your heartbeat is audible to you, which is a fact about the human body that is always true, but that is usually not the loudest thing in your awareness. Tonight, it is the loudest thing. You are aware that you are very high, and you are aware that being aware of being very high is making you more aware of being very high, and the loop of this awareness is not comfortable. You lie on the floor. This helps. The floor is stable and familiar, and at no point in your life has the floor let you down. You breathe deliberately. You drink water. You eat something starchy. You remind yourself that nothing is wrong and that this will pass, and that thousands of people are having exactly this experience in various living rooms right now, and all of them are going to be fine. You are going to be fine. 2 hours later, you are fine. You even laugh about it. But something shifted in that 2 hours. The doors of perception, as someone once wrote, opened a little wider than usual, and you briefly saw a room you weren't ready for. Not the actual psychedelic experience, just the anteroom of it. Just a glimpse of what it would look like if the alteration went significantly further. You file that knowledge away. Some people file it under never again. Some people file it yeet under interesting. Which file you put it in determines which level you go to next. Level 4, the mushroom, psilocybin. The active compound in roughly 200 species of mushroom that have been consumed by human beings for at least 10,000 years, found in cave paintings in North Africa dated to that age, used ceremonially across pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, rediscovered by Western culture in the 1950s, and then suppressed for 40 years and now re-emerging as one of the most intensively researched substances in clinical psychiatry. Johns Hopkins, NYU, Imperial College London. Phase 2 trials showing remarkable results for treatment-resistant depression. The FDA granting breakthrough therapy designation, a substance that governments spent decades classifying as having no medical value, demonstrating, under rigorous experimental conditions, that it has significant medical value. The science caught up with what the people who had been using it for 10,000 years already knew. You take 2 grams. This is a moderate dose, enough to produce noticeable effects without the full intensity of what larger doses produce. You are in a comfortable setting with people you trust because you read enough to know that set and setting, the mindset you bring and the environment you're in, determine the quality of the experience as much as the dose does. The onset is gradual, a warming, a lightening, a quality of attention that is similar to cannabis but deeper and more precise. Colors are vivid. Music is transcendent. The garden you're sitting in is the most beautiful garden you have ever seen, and it has always looked like this and you somehow forgot. There is laughter that comes from somewhere genuine and large. There is a conversation with someone you know well that goes to places conversations usually don't go, honest places, undefended places. There may be tears, not bad tears, the kind that come from feeling something accurately rather than from being upset. At the peak, for an hour or two, the ordinary scaffolding of self loosens slightly. Not frighteningly, like releasing a grip you didn't know you were holding. The sense that there is a you separate from everything else. The default human operating assumption softens at the edges. The boundary between inside and outside is still there, but it is less solid. You understand, briefly and viscerally rather than intellectually, that the separation between yourself and the world around you is a construction, a useful one, an important one, but a construction. You come down over several hours. The next morning you feel clear, cleaner than usual. The world looks familiar but slightly resaturated, as if the contrast had been turned up a notch. This lasts a few days, some of it lasts longer. Researchers call this the afterglow. It is real and measurable, and it is one of the reasons the clinical results for psilocybin in depression are as striking as they are. You sit with it. You think about what you felt. You are not sure you have the vocabulary for it. Most people don't, not right away. The vocabulary comes slowly if you let it. Level 5, the high dose. You go deeper. 5 grams. Sometimes called a heroic dose. The term was coined by the ethnobotanist who spent 40 years mapping the intersection of human consciousness and psychoactive plants, and who believed that certain experiences required a certain commitment to be fully accessed. 5 grams is not a social experience. It is not something you do in a garden with friends with music playing. 5 grams is something you do lying down in a dark room with an eye mask and music specifically selected for the purpose, and someone you deeply trust sitting nearby, not participating but present. It is an interior journey, and the interiority of it is total. The geometry begins. Patterns that are not quite visual, not quite thought, but something in between, something that the language of both perception and cognition reaches toward without fully grasping. They are intricate, and they move with a logic that feels consistent and generative even though no explanation of that logic is available to your conscious mind. Then the narrative mind, the part of you that is always telling you the story of who you are and what is happening and what things mean, goes quiet, not slowly, suddenly, like a transmission cutting out. And what is left in its absence is something that the contemplative traditions of every major religion in human history have been pointing at from different angles for thousands of years. The researchers call it ego dissolution. The Buddhists call it no self. The mystics call it union. What you call it is a problem you will spend the next several years productively working on. In the experience itself, you do not call it anything. There is nobody to do the calling. You come back in stages. The narrative mind reassembles. The self returns, recognizable and also subtly different, like a garment that has been washed and dried and fits the same but feels cleaner. The integration begins. Integration is the word used in psychedelic research for the process of making sense of what happened and finding ways to carry the insight into ordinary life. It is harder than the experience. It takes longer. It is arguably the whole point. Level 6, the Ketamine Clinic. This one has a waiting room, a receptionist, a blood pressure cuff. Ketamine is the first psychedelic-adjacent substance to achieve mainstream clinical legitimization in the United States, approved by the FDA for treatment-resistant depression in 2019 as an intranasal spray and administered in licensed clinics under medical supervision across the country. The experience it produces is dissociative rather than classically psychedelic, meaning it disconnects the experiencing mind from the ordinary sense of embodiment rather than dissolving the self entirely. And it does this while you are reclined in a medical chair with a blanket over you and soft lighting and a nurse checking your vitals every 15 minutes. The K-hole is the colloquial term for the deeper ketamine experience, and the term was coined in recreational contexts by people who used it outside medical settings, in clubs and at festivals, for whom the profound dissociation it produces was an aesthetic or recreational choice. In the clinical setting, the same phenomenon is called a dissociative state and is understood as the mechanism through which the antidepressant effect is produced. You go under. The room disappears, not the room going dark. The room ceasing to be the relevant frame of reference. You are somewhere that is not nowhere but is not anywhere that has coordinates. Your sense of having a body is vestigial, a faint background signal rather than the dominant channel. Time is not functioning normally. You are not afraid. The fear requires a self to experience it, and the self is not currently available. When you come back, the nurse is there. You are in the chair. There is a blanket. You had depression for 8 years and 4 medications that didn't work, and 3 therapists of varying usefulness and 2 courses of CBT. 6 ketamine sessions over 3 weeks later, the researchers' trials show that approximately half of treatment-resistant patients experience significant symptom reduction. You are one of them. The mechanism is not fully understood. The effect is real. You schedule your next session. There is a copay. Level 7, the ceremony. You flew to a retreat center in the Netherlands or Portugal or Peru or Costa Rica, one of the countries where what is about to happen is either legal or tolerated or traditional enough to be effectively protected. And you spent 2 days in preparation, which meant no alcohol, no cannabis, no antidepressants, a light diet, and a series of conversations with the facilitators about your intentions and your history and what you are hoping to find. The ceremony begins at night. 20 people in a large circular room with mattresses on the floor and buckets within reach, because the purge is real and not metaphorical, and the facilitators will tell you it is part of the process, and they are not wrong. You drink the cup. The contents taste like the Amazon rainforest tastes in your imagination, dense and ancient and slightly overwhelming. The onset of ayahuasca takes 45 minutes to an hour, and what arrives is not the rapid launch of smoked DMT, but a slow incoming tide that builds and builds until the shore is completely covered and you have no shore anymore. 4 to 6 hours. The duration is significant. This is not a quick trip to another dimension and back. This is a sustained encounter with whatever your psyche has been storing that you have not been looking at. It is not always pleasant. The medicine, as the tradition calls it, is not known for sparing feelings. It is known for precision. It tends to find the thing you most need to examine, and it places that thing directly in front of you with a clarity that ordinary consciousness would never permit, because ordinary consciousness has very efficient avoidance mechanisms, and ayahuasca dismantles avoidance mechanisms with the thoroughness of a deep clean. You may encounter something that functions like entities, presences. The quality of intelligence in the experience is something that the researchers acknowledge without being able to explain. 69% of people in survey data describe contact with what they perceive as conscious beings. The interpretation of this is a live debate in consciousness studies. The experience of it is undeniable for the people who have it. You come out the other side at dawn, wrung out, cleansed, carrying something you will spend months integrating. Some people return annually. Some people go once, and it is sufficient for a lifetime. The tradition holds both as valid. The work, the facilitators say, is not in the ceremony. The ceremony just opens the door. The work is everything you do after you walk through it. Level 8, the God molecule, 5-MeO-DMT, the most potent psychedelic substance known to science, found in the secretions of a specific desert toad native to the Sonoran region, and also synthesized in laboratories, and producing in the space of 15 to 20 minutes an experience that the people who have taken it and the researchers who study it consistently struggle to find adequate language for. The serotonin 1A receptor, full agonism at concentrations that psilocybin and LSD cannot approach. Ego dissolution is not the word because ego dissolution implies the ego is present and has dissolved. What 5-MeO-DMT produces is more accurately described as ego absence. The self that would experience the dissolution is not there to experience it. What is there instead is what the researchers call non-dual awareness and what the mystics call absolute reality, and what you, when you try to talk about it afterwards, describe in metaphors that all fall short. 15 minutes. That is the duration, the briefest of any substance on this list and also the most extreme, 20 times more potent than DMT by weight. The researchers at GH Research in Dublin have just completed a Phase 2b trial showing a placebo-adjusted reduction of 15 points on the standard depression scale, with 57% of patients achieving full remission after a single dose. The FDA allowed advanced trials in 2026. The science is arriving behind the experience with the delay that science always has when the experience is genuinely ahead of the existing framework. You are in a clinical setting, or you are in a ceremonial one. You inhale it once. The onset is measured in seconds. By the time you could form a sentence about what is happening, the capacity to form sentences is no longer available. What happens in those 15 minutes is not describable by the person it happens to. Not because they lack intelligence or vocabulary, because the experience does not occur within the structure that generates description. There is no subject to do the describing. There is no object being described. There are not two things in the room anymore. You come back. 15 minutes have passed. You are on the mat. The facilitator is there. You are crying, or you are laughing, or you are completely still, or you are doing all three simultaneously, and none of it is a performance. Something happened that was larger than the framework you brought with you, and the framework is going to need to be rebuilt around it. And the rebuilding is the work of years, not weeks. The researchers note that 5-MeO-DMT is being studied for treatment-resistant depression, for PTSD, for addiction, for the category of human suffering that ordinary interventions have not reached. The mechanism is unclear. The effect size in the trials is the largest seen in any psychiatric intervention in the modern era. Something is happening in those 15 minutes that the science cannot yet fully account for. You sit up slowly. The facilitator hands you water. The room is the room. You are you. Probably. You are working on what you means right now, and it is going to take a while. That's okay. You have time.